Your life changes the day the packages start arriving. You're 7 years old, standing in the driveway of a cramped apartment complex, watching a delivery driver haul 3 massive boxes to your door. At first, you think it's early Christmas, but the boxes aren't full of toys. They're full of ring lights, tripods, and enough high-end makeup to paint a skyscraper. You don't know it yet, but these are the tools of the trade. You don't know that your mom just quit her job at the dental office to become a full-time creator. To you, she's just mom, and she suddenly has a lot more time to spend at home. The air in the house starts to change. The usual smell of home-cooked meals is gone, replaced by the sharp chemical sting of hairspray and the dry heat of electronics running for hours. You walk past her closed door and feel a strange warmth radiating through the wood, almost like the room itself has a fever. Sometimes you find a stray sequin on the carpet, looking like a bright fish scale in the hallway light. You pick it up and wonder what kind of conference call needs glitter, but when she finally emerges, her face is hidden under a mask of makeup so thick that it almost looks like porcelain. The apartment doesn't stay small for long. Within 6 months, you're moving into a house with a pool and a kitchen that looks like it belongs in a magazine. Mom tells you she's a social media manager, and because you're a kid, you believe her. It makes sense, considering she's always on her phone. You get used to the do not disturb sign hanging on her bedroom door for hours every afternoon. She tells you that she's on important conference calls, so you learn to play video games with the volume muted. The house is quiet except for the faint muffled sound of her laughing or talking in a voice that sounds slightly higher than her normal one. It's a performance, but you're too young to recognize the script. But then you hit middle school, and the world starts to leak through the cracks. You're sitting at the back of the bus when a kid 3 grades above you shows you a screen. It's a blurred thumbnail on a website you've never seen, but you recognize the kitchen. You recognize the marble island where you eat your cereal every morning. The kid laughs and asks if your house is always that clean, and you feel a cold shiver run down your spine. You don't answer him. You just stare out the window, realizing that for the first time, the conference calls weren't for a marketing firm. The air in the bus suddenly feels too thin to breathe, while your ears start to ring and the roar of the engine turns into a dull hum. The Marble Island went from a place of innocence where you eat your cereal to a stage that's been broadcast to thousands of people. You think about the messy crumbs you left there this morning and feel a wave of nausea. Every tile in your kitchen now feels like it has a camera lens hidden behind it. You look at your own reflection in the bus window and wonder if you've been a background character in a story you've never actually watched. The realization doesn't happen all at once. Rather, it builds like a slow-motion car crash. You start noticing the way people look at your mom when she drops you off at school. The other moms stand in a tight circle, whispering and turning their heads away when she waves. The dads are different, because they either look at their shoes or they stare a little too long. You see them adjust their glasses or pull their caps down lower. It makes your stomach churn. You start asking to be dropped off a block away from the entrance, claiming you want the exercise. Mom just sighs and agrees, her eyes staying glued to her phone as she checks her latest notifications. By the time you're 14, you've become an expert at digital surveillance. You wait until she's in the shower and you find her secondary Instagram account. It's not the one where she posts pictures of your golden retriever or your birthday cakes. This one has 2 million followers and a link in the bio that leads to a paywall. You click it and your heart feels like it's trying to exit your chest. You see the stage names and the costumes. You see the way she interacts with fans who pay $50 just to hear her say their name.
Daddy?
It's a business, and you realize you're a silent partner at a firm you never signed up for. But the money makes it hard to stay angry. You have the latest iPhone before anyone else in your grade. You have a closet full of designer sneakers that your friends drool over. It's a weird trade-off, like you're being paid hush money for a crime you didn't commit. You start to feel like an accomplice. When she asks you to help her move a velvet couch into the studio room, you do it without a word. You help her set up the backdrops. You even learn how to adjust the lighting so there's no shadows on the walls. You're the technical director for a production that you can never tell your teachers about. One day, the reality of it hits home in a way you can't ignore. You're at a high school football game, sitting in the bleachers with a girl you really like. Her dad is the coach, a guy who talks about character and integrity like they're the only things that matter. He walks over to say hello, but then he sees your mom walking towards the concessions. He freezes, and the look on his face is one of recognition, not of disgust. He knows her, but he knows her from the screen. He looks at you, then back at her, and then the conversation with the girl just dies on the vine. You realize that your social life has a ceiling, and you've just hit it. You feel exposed standing there on the bleachers, as if the stadium lights are searching for you specifically. The look on the coach's face is a heavy weight that settles in your gut, being a silent recognition that strips away your name and replaces it with a dirty secret. You watch the way he quickly looks away, his face turning a shade of red that matches the team's jerseys. The girl you like is still talking, but her voice sounds like it's coming from underwater. It's clear that her house will never be a place where you're welcome. So you start to retreat into yourself. You stop inviting people over because you're afraid they'll see the work clothes drying in the laundry room. You become a ghost in your own school. Your grades stay up because you have nothing better to do than study, but your soul feels like it's being sanded down. You watch your mom buy a new German SUV, and you wonder how many subscribers it took to pay for the leather seats. You start calculating the cost of your life in terms of clicks and views. It's a depressing math, and you're the only one doing the equations. But then comes the fan incident. You're at the grocery store, grabbing a gallon of milk, when a man in his 50s approaches your mom. The man smells like stale cigarettes and a sour, nervous sweat, with a greasy sheen on his skin that makes your stomach turn. When he looks at your mom, his eyes are wide and fixed, like he's staring at a screen instead of a human being. His hands are shaking as he reaches out to touch her arm. He calls her by her stage name, Lexi, and tells her that he's been a top subscriber for 3 years. You feel the icy condensation of the milk jug soaking through your shirt, and it's the only thing that feels real. His voice is a wet, desperate rasp that makes your skin crawl. He says he feels like they have a real connection. You see the terror in your mom's eyes. The moment the digital wall crumbles and the real world rushes in, you step between them, even though you're only 15 and the guy is twice your size. You tell him to get lost, and your voice sounds deeper than you thought it could. The drive home is silent, but it's a heavy silence that fills the car like lead. Mom's crying, but she's also checking her phone to see if anyone caught the interaction on video. She's worried about her brand. You then realize that the persona has swallowed the person. She has become a digital asset that needs to be protected and managed. You feel a wave of pity for her, which is almost worse than the anger. She's trapped in a loop of validation and cash, and she doesn't know how to get out. However, life goes on because it has to. You graduate high school, and she offers to pay for any college you want. No loans required. It's a golden ticket, but it feels like it's covered in grease. You pick a school 3 states away, somewhere no one knows your last name. You want to be a person who isn't the son of that lady. You want a life that isn't backlit by a ring light. So you pack your bags, and she gives you a hug that feels more like a PR move than a goodbye. She's filming the whole thing for a heartfelt vlog about her son going to college. One day you're sitting in your dorm room, and you get a notification. It's a news article about a massive data leak from the site she uses. Thousands of real names and addresses have been posted online. You call her immediately, but her phone goes straight to voicemail. You see the headlines starting to pop up on Twitter. People are making lists. They're finding the moms and teachers and neighbors who have been living double lives. You feel like the floor is dropping out from under you. This isn't a secret anymore. It's a public record. The fallout is fast and brutal. You see the comments on her Instagram, people calling her names that make your blood boil. You see the trolls finding your own social media accounts, posting screenshots of her work in your mentions. You have to delete everything. You have to become a digital nomad, jumping from one alias to another just to have a conversation without being harassed. You realize that the freedom that money bought was just a different kind of prison. You're the collateral damage of a business model that trades privacy for profit. But you find a way to survive. You work 3 jobs in college, so you don't have to take her money. You want to know that the food in your stomach was bought with your own sweat. It's hard, and your roommates think you're crazy for living on ramen when your mom's a millionaire. They don't understand the weight of a dollar that comes with a content warning. They don't know what it's like to look at a luxury car and see the faces of 1,000 lonely men. And then comes the day you finally go home for a visit. The house is even bigger now, but it feels like a mausoleum. There are cameras in almost every room, even the kitchen. Mom tells you they're for security, but you know they're for behind-the-scenes footage. She looks tired, despite the expensive skincare and the perfect hair. She asks how you're doing, but she doesn't wait for the answer before she's checking a notification. You realize that you're just another character in her story, the successful college son who proves that she's a good mother. So you make a choice. You tell her you're not coming back for the summer. You tell her that you found a job in a different city, a boring job with a spreadsheet at a cubicle. She looks disappointed, but only because she had a family reunion shoot planned for July. You walk out the door, and for the first time in your life, you don't look back. You don't care about the pool or the designer clothes or the high-speed internet. You just want to be invisible. One day, you're walking down a street in a city where no one knows you. You see a woman who looks a little like her, and for a second, your heart stops. But then you realize it's just a stranger. You feel a sense of relief that's so profound that it almost makes you dizzy. You're finally back to being just a normal guy walking down the street, and that is the greatest luxury you've ever known. But the internet, it never forgets. Every few months, you'll be scrolling through a thread and you'll see her face. Someone will repost an old video or a meme, and the familiar feeling of dread will wash over you. You've learned to keep scrolling. You've learned to treat her like a celebrity that you've used to know rather than the woman who raised you. It's a survival tactic. It's a way to keep your own identity from being swallowed by her brand. Eventually, you meet someone, a girl who doesn't spend 8 hours a day on her phone. She's a nurse, and she talks about her patients with a passion that isn't for sale. You wait 6 months before you tell her about your mom. You're terrified that she'll leave, or worse, that she'll want to see the videos, but she just listens. She takes your hand and tells you that you're not your mom's career. It's the first time anyone has ever said that to you, and it feels like a heavy chain just snapped off your chest. But then, the phone rings. It's a number you haven't seen in 2 years. It's your mom's assistant, a young girl who sounds like she's about to have a nervous breakdown. She tells you that your mom is in the hospital. You panic, and then you find out it was a mental health crisis that happened during a live stream. Fans watched everything. The comments are still scrolling. Thousands of people debating whether whether it was real or just a stunt for engagement. You realize that even her lowest moment is just more content for the machine. You go to the hospital, and for the first time, there are no cameras. There are no ring lights. There's just a tired woman in a thin gown, looking at a wall that isn't a green screen. She looks at you, and for a second, the mask slips. She doesn't ask about your job or your girlfriend. She just asks if you're okay. You realize that she's been drowning in the shallow end of the pool for a decade, and she finally hit rock bottom. You stay with her for 3 days, and for those 3 days, she's just mom. However, the world doesn't stop. The tabloids pick up the story. They run headlines about the downfall of an icon. They use pictures of you from when you were a kid, blurring your face, but not enough to hide who you are. You see the cycle starting all over again. The voyeurism, the judgment, the endless hunger for a peek behind the curtain. You realize that as long as she's famous, you'll always be a part of the show. So you make a deal with her. You tell her that you'll help her get better, but she has to delete the accounts. She has to walk away from the millions of followers and the mountain of cash. She looks at you like you're asking her to cut off an arm. The brand is the only thing she has left. It's her identity, her bank account, and her social life all rolled into one. She says she'll think about it, which you know is a polite way of saying no. One day you realize that you can't save someone who doesn't want to be rescued. You leave the hospital and you get on a plane. You go back to your boring life and your boring job. You set her flowers on her birthday and she posts a picture of them with a caption about family being everything. You don't comment, you don't like the post. You just turn off your phone and go for a walk. The funny thing is, people still think it's a dream life. They see the fancy cars and vacations and think it's a lottery win. They don't see the way it hollows you out. They don't see the way it turns every memory into a potential transaction. You've learned that the most valuable thing in the world is simply a quiet dinner with a person who isn't recording the conversation. You're 25 now and you've finally managed to build a wall around your life. You've changed your last name legally. You don't have any public social media profiles. You're a ghost in a world that's obsessed with being seen. Sometimes you'll be at a party and someone will mention a famous creator and you'll just nod and smile like you have no idea who they're talking about. It's a lie, but it's a lie that keeps you sane. But then you see a kid at the park. He's about 70 years old and he's holding a phone for his mom while she dances in front of a fountain. He looks bored. His eyes are tracking the dogs playing in the grass while he tries to keep the camera steady. You see yourself in him. You see the beginning of the cycle, the moment the child becomes a tripod. You want to walk over and tell him to run. You want to tell him that the likes aren't worth the life he's losing, but you don't. You keep walking. You know that he has to find his own way out of the frame. You know that eventually he'll realize that the do not disturb sign isn't for the conference calls. He'll find the accounts and the comments and the fans who know this house better than he does. He'll have to decide if he wants to be a character or a person. It's a choice that every child of the internet has to make, and it's a choice that usually comes too late. The sun is setting and the park is getting quiet. You find a bench and you just sit there, watching the sky change colors. There's no filter, no editing, and no one's watching. You realize that this is the only content that actually matters. The moments that aren't shared, the feelings that aren't monetized. You feel a sense of peace that doesn't need a caption. You're not the son of an OnlyFans mom anymore. You're just a man sitting on a bench. And for the first time in your life, that's more than enough. And then your phone buzzes in your pocket. It's a text from a number you don't recognize. You hesitate, your old paranoia flaring up like a pilot light. You open it, expecting a troll or a fan who found your new number. But it's just your mom. It's a picture of the sunset from her balcony. There's no caption, no hashtags, no link in the bio. It's just a picture. And you look at it for a long time. And then you put the phone back in your pocket. You don't reply. You just sit there in the fading light, finally realizing that the only way to win the game is to stop playing.